You're listening to the BBM Global Network with 25 years in broadcast audio and video production. Our passionate team creates content and marketing for the world of Internet Talk Radio. If you've got a passion, come join us at bbmglobalnetwork.com. The BBM Global Network. Your voice is now heard.
Welcome to Happiness Ninja Down Under with your host, Jamie Rose. Jamie will educate and empower people, organizations, and communities to help us all make better health and well-being choices. She will also engage you with expert influencers from around the world. So now, please welcome the host of Happiness Ninja Down Under, Jamie Rose.
Welcome to Happiness Ninja Down Under. I'm Jamie Rose, and this is Bold Brave TV. You tuned into another exciting episode coming to you live from New York City. I have another amazing guest all the way from the UK again. That's 2 weeks in a row. I have the founder and CEO of Happiness Lab, David. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right, David. Is it Bellamy or Bellamy?
It's Bellamy. Yeah, David Bellamy.
Bellamy. I should have asked that before we went live, but I forgot. Thanks for joining me. It is quite late there. So I appreciate you taking the time. Welcome. And I just want to get stuck straight into the Happiness Lab because it is a fabulous platform. It's an employee listening platform that helps increase engagement within the workplace, which is a much needed fabulous thing. So I just wanted to dive straight in. And how did you found the Happiness Lab and tell us what led you to that?
Yeah, okay, cool. Well, thank you for having me. 11 o'clock on a Friday. But yes, so Happiness Lab, we used to be a management consulting firm, and we work with organizations, leadership teams, and doing that Jim Collins style good to great journey. So you're working with leadership teams, helping them to sort of understand more about the workplace or to create better companies. And we kept coming across this gap, right? Everybody in leaders in companies, they have, so all companies have this, right? So this sense of an ideal culture. So this is what we want it to be, the dream version. And then there's the version that they think they've got, which is normally vastly inflated from what they, from what others see. And of course, the bottom bit then is how employees feel, right? And it's very different. And we kept coming across this. So we'd ask the staff how they felt, and the leaders always thought it was better, but it wasn't good enough. And we set out with Happiness Lab to fill that gap because they're all relying on surveys, right? So a survey every year. How do you feel about this? How do you feel about that? And so Happiness Lab started with this idea. Why don't we ask people, rather than how do you feel about something, just how do you feel? So we ask you that every day. And so we do sort of little daily check-in routine. And from that, we sort of find ourselves drifting into kind of all sorts of stuff. So we describe ourselves now as, that was 2017, we launched this sort of beta product, and we find ourselves now describing ourselves as you already said, employee listening and well-being. And there's, because we realize that we can see, sort of happiness as our gauge. We can see how people are doing, and that well-being question is huge, isn't it, right now?
It's massive, especially at the moment with the state of the world. I think the first question that comes up for me is, so you're asking people how they're feeling. So how do you get an honest answer out of them, David? Because, we all know, especially within the corporate world, especially, our feelings don't really matter. We're kind of treated like a number, and we're not exactly encouraged to express our feelings sometimes, or it can be encouraged, but then there's a fear, like what's the repercussions of being honest. So how is Happiness Lab dealing with that?
Well, that's a great question. There's probably 3 or 4 questions in there. But I think the first thing, honestly, so one of the great things about the product we've built is it isn't asking for feedback, right? We're not asking you to tell me how you feel about something. So, so that sort of sense of, I'm going to say something wrong. How do you feel right now? We're not telling, how do you feel about work? How do you feel at work? We don't ask you that. How do you feel? Right. So when we turn up, we ask the question at different times every day. So it becomes a sort of random picture over time. It's encouraging individuals to do a little bit of self-checking, but also then sort of tuning into what's going on for their colleagues as well. So you're creating this sort of individual, and the company gets to understand some stuff too. So you start with that and recognize that, well, okay, it's okay for people just to share how they feel, right? So we've got rating scale 0 to 100. And people always ask you why 0 to 100. We tried 0 to 10, and we got loads of 7s, right? We tested that. And then when you do 0 to 100, and it starts at 50, so you've got to choose one way or another. So it just makes you think a little bit more deeply. You don't get lots of 7s, right? Well, more precise, but it's just a bit nuanced. And so I think what people tend to do is they sort of tune in a slightly different way. And so you're kind of saying, how do you feel today? Well, I feel rubbish because I missed my breakfast, or the traffic was terrible coming to work, or, I just had a terrible meeting, or my kid's sick. Those things influence us at work. So they might not all be about work, but they're going to influence my performance.
So they, you're finding, like, is it anonymous? Because I would still think that people would be a bit scared to even say that they're not feeling, like putting their hand up and admitting, like, I'm feeling sad today. I don't think too many people in the workplace would want to do that.
Well, no, do you know what? That's why we do what we do. So that's why we describe ourselves as the wellbeing monitoring platform. So
it is anonymous, yeah.
Yeah. It has to be anonymous, right? So because, so nothing, we're really precious about this. Nothing that we do assigns names to it. So it does all sorts of things, right? So firstly, we're encouraging you to be able to say that I'm not okay. Right? I'm not feeling good, right? But we've seen lots and lots of stuff like that, and I would like to talk more about some of the examples because they're really powerful stories for us in our own learning, But they led to us developing algorithms so that even if you're not feeling okay, one of the things we notice, right? So you rate how you're feeling, write a comment, and then you can share that comment or keep it private. So that's our daily routine. When people are having a tough time and they rate lower, they tend to write fewer comments and they share even fewer comments, right? So the point, so we don't want to be negative around our colleagues. We don't want to bum everybody else out. We don't want to share our troubles, all that sort of stuff.
So you can see these patterns emerging.
Right, exactly right. And so the system now, algorithms that are now watching people say, so your daily routine, most people have little patterns of data, right? So their normal way that they feel. Some people can reside in the 30 to 50 zone, which feels alien to me, but they'll just, they're perfectly okay.
Their base. Yeah, that's their base happiness level.
But if you drop to a totally different area, so suddenly you start rating 20, the system is thinking, okay, so that user doesn't normally do that. Maybe we should watch that for a bit. And then produces little packages of data that, again, stay anonymous, but it starts to give us a way of just keeping an eye then on people and saying, and then saying to people, look, if you want to reach out in the platform again, keeping their identity protected. So you can have a conversation in the platform between sort of a well-being agent and an employee, and the employee never reveals their identity. There's nothing about that conversation, but you can just say, are you doing okay? And most people say, thank you for checking out. I'm having a tough time, but I'm all right.
Yeah, that's a nice little back end extra bit to it. We do have to cut to the break. When we come back, I'd love for you to share some of those examples and stories, and also maybe just touch on. I'm assuming that people embrace this once it's been in the workplace a little bit longer, but we can get into that when we come back from the break. So stay tuned, guys. We'll be back in a moment.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back to Happiness Ninja Down Under. I am Jamie Rose, the host of this show, and you are tuned into the Bold Media Network. I have an amazing person here with me today from the UK, David Bellamy, or Bellamy, I think I slaughtered. Apologize. He is the CEO and founder of Happiness Lab. Before opening the Happiness Lab, he was a leadership consultant. He founded another company in the UK, and then he decided to switch focus to employee engagement. Thanks again for coming on so late, David. Before the break, we were just sort of touching on the algorithms of the platform. When we first spoke about 4 years ago, I know the tool was a lot simpler back then. So did you want to how did you get to the point where you are? You touched on some really cool features, how you can reach out to staff anonymously and check in and see if they're okay. So yeah, how did it get to be such a complicated algorithm and platform from where the early beginnings?
Yeah, it was a bit by bit. And learning as we go, but there are some seminal moments that I talk about. 2019, there was a moment, and I'll never forget this. So Monday morning, I got to work and I got this email from the chief people officer in one of our clients, and so as I was describing before, you rate, capture a comment, and then you share it. And if you share it, it goes to this place called the Wall, which is just it's a list of ratings and comments, no names, but just sort of here's my rating and here's my comment, right? So and then people can interact about that. But this company had said, look, we've got this comment from the weekend that we saw, and we're really worried about the person. Can we do something? And this comment was a rating of 5. Now, remember, I said, so we're a 0 to 100 scale. You start at 50. To get to 5, you've got to be quite deliberate. Right, so rating of 5, and a comment, right, pretty low, and I'm really worried about the future. I don't know how I'm going to be able to pay for the funeral, let alone get my family to it. I guess my mother could have picked a better month to die, right? And so that's a kind of it's really sad, isn't it? And it's one of those things. Okay, so what do we do? And we look back at the data, and at this point. So our ability to sort of access that data was to a handful of people. But so I look back and you can see sort of 4 or 5 weeks earlier, this lady in the US, as it turned out, was unremarkable in Happiness Lab terms. So she rated most days normally between 60 and 70. talked about home, talked about work, talked about not much, all that sort of stuff. And then first reference to poorly mother drops into the 50s. Changed a schedule. Yeah, they changed the scheduling, a shift allocation system, which affected a large population of the employees, but it had a compound effect in this instance, right? So suddenly what you see was over the next 4 weeks, as her ratings were drifting 30 to 20, it was declining mother's health plus a reduction in shifts, uncertainty of income that was causing this nervousness. And I think that moment, you see, so we watched that go all the way down. We realized then in the middle of 2019 that we could see decline in an individual happening. We were looking backwards. We were looking backwards at it, but of course, once we think, okay, that's a perfect downward spiral in a human being, and we saw it in data, but we're late. How do we get ahead of it? Right? So that's where that was where we said, okay, we must do that. But the other really important part of that, trigger point for the algorithms, it's really important. But the other really important part of that process was the realization that happiness all wrong. Right, we were approaching it like we do with employee engagement. You start to think, okay, how do I make people more engaged? How do I get them happier? And actually, what we have built is the gauge, if that makes sense. So happiness isn't a goal; it's a gauge. And when we are feeling bad, we don't perform as well.
So I have one question about this this lady. So. Did you disclose to the company who she was because of the situation, or how do you handle a situation? It's a unique situation, one that you have to know how to deal with.
Yeah, well, so back in 2019, it was it was quite unique, and back then, so we talked about that messaging system inside the platform, so that's what we built to avoid having to do what we had to do, right? So this instance, I had to write to her. So I was the only person who could connect a human being to their data. So we didn't disclose it to the company. We wrote and said, "Are you okay? Would you like to talk to somebody?" And she said, "You know what? I'm okay. I'm struggling." And we had a conversation. But there was a point. So and the reason I sort of said back then it was unusual, when lockdown happened, this was happening all the time. Right? And there was a moment in a UK bank where we saw a suicide ideation comment. So just somebody saying, "I want to get off the world." Wasn't making a promise or a threat or any of that sort of stuff. It was just that.
Just
expressing. But with suicide reference had us all scrambling, and again, I had to email this individual, a guy, and talk to him, and company didn't really have any mechanisms. His company didn't have any mechanisms to have that conversation, and we got him into counseling. But it made me realize that we can't email people in those situations. We have to close off this kind of, we talk about anonymity and we talk about protecting identity. Then we had to find a mechanism to do that without breaching trust. And so then closing off, so the ability to reach out, and we can do that for lots of different places in the platform, lots of different ways now. So places you can reach out just to ask for more information or just to check if they're okay, and lots of different things that we can do. But that's powerful. The other thing that came out of that situation, that suicide ideation piece, was the point. So that's when we realized that people weren't sharing comments, and so we knew we had to get to. So if he told us that he was feeling that way, what if there were others who weren't telling us, right? So then again starts to change the way we approach, the way we present data. Is exactly what has led us into this much richer picture, saying, well, we can now give companies that assurance that their people are okay, and that you can focus on creating a great environment, knowing that there's a safety net to catch people before, and this is a really important thing, before it gets too serious, because otherwise we put our hands up right at the last minute, don't we?
Yeah, and unfortunately that does seem to be the way a lot of companies do approach these things. It's more in a reactive manner rather than a preventative manner, which essentially Happiness Lab and the platform is. It's an amazing preventative tool to help catch these patterns and these problems in the workplace, like you said, before they get to a huge issue where nobody knows what to do. We do have to cut to another break, but to share a couple more stories, and I will ask a few more questions to sort of help people understand, just how beneficial this tool would be in their organization. So we'll be back in a moment, guys.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back to Happiness Ninja Down Under. I am Jamie Rose, and this is Bold Brave TV. Before the break, I had David Bellamy. I'll get it right one of these days, David. Discussing Happiness Lab. David and his team have created a fabulous algorithm platform to monitor employee happiness and well-being. David, before the break, you were sharing a story on how the algorithm, what led to the algorithm being put into place, and it was you were telling us about a couple of serious situations where the well-being of a staff member was flagged as potentially problematic in terms of like suicide, ideation, really struggling with some potential mental health problems. I just wanted to go into, have you found that it takes a little bit for staff to embrace this? Does the company need to sort of encourage the use of it because people are scared that it's not really anonymous?
That's a great question. I think this is where everybody talks about psychological safety, don't they? And how important it is. And of course, Google talked about, is it Project Aristotle, I think it was, that's sort of the most important factor that separates. And everybody psychological safety in a way that, look, we want to be able to talk openly with each other, but it's never safe to do that, right? We can never say, I'm always talking to CEOs about the fact that when they'll tell the story of how they struggled when they were younger, and earlier in their career, they had mental health issues. And I'm always questioning, why didn't you tell anybody then? And the reason they didn't tell anybody then is because it's not safe to do so, right? They probably wouldn't be the. And so for us, that back to that psychological safety thing, it's fundamental. Right? We've got to get this people to be able to talk safely. And if we want to understand our workplaces and understand what's contributing, burnout is caused by work, right? So yeah, and all of this is leading me to basically to the point you're saying. Well, actually, the way that we listen influences what and how people share. So the tool provides you table stakes. Everybody can talk equally, openly, you know, in sort of that safe sense. But if your leaders don't listen, people will stop sharing. If your leaders react badly every time somebody says something you don't like, and we've had people trying to find out who said something, you know.
I can imagine.
So we'll protect the data, we protect the identity, but people will tune out. So we don't have none of our clients mandate, and we try really hard to work with them to ensure that they learn to listen differently. That we, there's a brilliant story that a really large company here in the UK has a big change program going, technology program, and everybody's working every weekend, and then one day somebody writes on the wall, "We are destroying this team, right? We're all burning out. This is so far against our values, it's not funny." That's what the comment said. And then a reply comes. So there's a debate, right? Lots of people are talking about it, and everybody's worried. And then a comment appears, and it's from one of the main board directors, announces his presence with his name. "Hi, I just want to thank you for telling me. I've heard you. Leave it with me. I'll deal with this." All right. And I got an email 24 hours later from somebody else just saying Happiness Lab just paid for itself because he took action. And that meant that everybody then, you know, so that's brilliant, because that's a great example. So they didn't need to challenge it, didn't need to debate it openly, tell anybody, find who's saying this, I need to know, just heard enough opinion. So that's acknowledge you. I've heard what you have to say. Yeah. And so yeah, you know, that and so what happens with us always is that people test the boundaries a little bit. You're going to have some brave souls in an organization that are going to be saying stuff that's controversial to see what happens. And gradually, if you listen, if your leaders behave in a way that this is just information, right? The more we understand about how people feel at work, and we often challenge, and we see leaders wanting to challenge, why do people say negative things? You know, what's wrong with people moaning? And the question I should be asking why they say that, but from a different perspective. So why is their experience of work so different than yours? Why do people feel, why are they having such a difficult time that they need to talk like this? Why do they want to express themselves in this way if it's hurtful? You know, and so they're interesting questions about people who are on the same side, you know. And anyway, so that's the kind of point. And so anonymity, back to that point, protecting people's identity and to communicate really sort of maturely and sensitively too, both ways.
Well, it certainly sounds like it does give employees a voice and empowers them to feel like that they can, you know, speak up and about what's going on. I do find it very interesting that still in, you know, 2021, we have people who are running and leading, you know, these large organizations, and yet they think that it's a bad thing to find out the truth of the situation as it is. Because, like, it's almost like they're not realizing that this is all still there within the organization. It's just that now they have a chance to actually do something about it positively, rather than just ignore it, and then essentially, ultimately, that could be the demise of a business.
Yeah, it could. But you know, so I think it's a nuanced thing there, right? Because most people really senior want this information and they don't get it, right? Because we've all been there, right? What happens is somebody tells me something and I've got to tell my boss, but I'm not going to tell him to finesse it a little bit, right? So I'm going to make it sound not as bad as I was told, because I don't want my boss to get cross. I'm going to tell him or her boss, you know, and all the way, by the time it gets to the top, it's like a game of Chinese whispers, right? It's totally changed. And so
no one thinks there's a problem anymore, but there's a huge problem.
That's exactly right. That's exactly it, right? So
everyone's like, why am I hearing about this non-problem?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so that's, you know, so that back to it's like that TV show, you know, sort of, you know, the secret boss, you know, that goes back to the shop floor, that thing. That's what we've created, like a live version of that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's undercover boss. That's a really cool way to look at it. Well, I think it's amazing. We have to cut to the break. I have a lot of more questions to go into. So we'll come back and we'll keep going with unraveling the Happiness Lab employee engagement listening platform. Stay tuned, guys.
The opiate epidemic has reached crisis levels, and with so many families affected by addiction, opiate-related drug overdoses, and death, the time is now to have a real constructive conversation about addiction that could lead to better prevention, treatment, and recovery. Alan Charles, author and keynote speaker on drug abuse and prevention, presents The Alan Charles Show. Alan brings a message of hope, sharing his unbelievable story of surviving a 24-year addiction to cocaine and highlights from his memoir, Walking Out the Other Side, an addict's journey from loneliness to life. His raw honesty and courageous heart breaks the stigma of addiction and offers a unique perspective into the mind of an addict. Join Alan each week as he brings his listeners to a true understanding of the grip of addiction. It is only with this understanding that we can begin to heal. The Alan Charles Show, Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network. Have you ever felt like no one is listening, or you're not getting the honest attention you deserve? Do you even know the kind of attention you want or need? You are not alone. Alice Aspen March is here to help. Thanks to Alice, through her epiphany and research over the word attention, there are solutions to the attention dilemma. Worldwide audiences have been enthralled and engaged for over 40 years with her visionary and pioneering observations. The kind of attention we get and give is vital to improving our lives and society. Alice and her weekly guests review game-changing insights for transforming and improving our understanding of attention, providing techniques for creating healthier and empowering behavior. Get a new perspective on a mainstream word. Tune into Why Our Attention Matters for fresh and thought-provoking conversations every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern on boldbravemedia.com and the TuneIn Radio app.
Welcome back to Happiness Ninja Down Under. I am Jamie Rose, and this is Bold Brave Media. I have David Bellamy here from Happiness Lab. He has been telling us all about the incredible algorithms and listening platform that him and his team have developed at Happiness Lab. So before the break, David, you were sharing with us how the algorithm sort of developed. You've come a long way from the simple platform that it once was a few years ago. I just wanted to segue and sort of delve into, I don't like to talk about the pandemic, but given the situation and what you're doing, I think it's really important. What changes have you seen, and how are things moving along with your platform in the changes that we're currently seeing in the world with the mental health and employee engagement?
Yeah. Well, you can probably imagine that last year, I mean, crikey, March took everybody by surprise, didn't it? And it's the one time I think we don't do benchmarking across organizations. I think, trying to compare individual contexts makes no sense to me. But it was the one time that everybody reacted in the same way at the same time.
Which is telling.
So you sort of have this moment where the sort of the ratings dropped through the floor. So we saw happiness levels, if you like, the daily check-in rating drop 20 points in a day, and it was incredible because, of course, all over the world, people were locking down around the same time, and people were fear and anxiety and uncertainty and all those things that we don't like as humans. And it was fear about loved ones and how long is this going to last and what's it going to mean and am I going to be safe and am my family going to be safe? So you see that nervousness, and it came out in narrative around the world as well. So people writing on the wall about fear and nervousness and all those sorts of things. And then, quite quickly it changed. So the narrative changed to, in the first instance, kind of frustrations with working from home and challenges with technology and homeschooling children and all that sort of stuff, and then settled into a pattern. But what followed was probably know as well to be true, but a stark difference between working women and working mothers, I should say, and others, because of course children at home made such a difference. So we saw that sort of thing in data. Yeah, and then we saw lots of other things. So you'd see in organisations the effect of, there were deaths in workplaces, and there were redundancies, and there were pay freezes, and there were economic implications. And so you see this thing. And so what we were watching then was that people's sort of happiness gradually lifting back up, but never quite reaching where it was pre-pandemic, right? So that was just an interesting thing to observe. But there were some really other really interesting things that you noticed as well, right? Again, we've all seen these, but that process that we went through of Zooming each other, like you and I are doing tonight, of course, but Zooming all day long, every day, we saw into each other.
Exhausting.
Yeah, but we saw into each other's homes, and it gave that thing context, people's context. You could see people working on a dining room table compared to the guy who's got a nice office at home, and all that sort of stuff. And so that created a bit more empathy and a bit more sense of, okay, perhaps when you've got children running around in the background, we can give our colleagues a bit of slack and be a bit more understanding, because we're human, right? And I think coming out of it, as we're starting to look back at whether it's coming back to work or hybrid, or so we allowed work into our homes for a period, and the way I like to think about it now is that we need to allow a bit of home into work, so we've got to find this balance again. So now the sort of human stuff matters. So that was really, really interesting. But and now, of course, everybody's struggling to work out what the future looks like for them. Where should they be working? Do I need to be told when to, can I be at home? And it's such a personal thing. When we see data and commentary narrative around how people feel about these things, this stuff is going to roll, because actually I think what we want is choice. It's fundamental human needs. We need that autonomy, that sense of control over our own destinies, our own actions, and so self-mastery, right? Yeah, and so the process here that we've got to get into our thinking, it's not hybrid working, it's flexibility that we need, right? And the way that flexibility is going to work is not by coming up with more complex rules, it's by agreements. We're going to need staff to work out, and this is not a job for managers, this is a job for staff to say what work needs to be done. And when I need to be doing it with other people, I need to be together with them if I can be. And when I've got work to do where I need to put my headphones, metaphorically put your headphones in, but or you cold towel over the head, then I can be on my own, and I can be anywhere.
Yeah, head down, bum up. Yeah. So David, I have this is for my own personal interest, but do you notice a significant difference in males and females and the fluctuation of emotions, or has it been similar?
I think it's I wouldn't call it an agenda line. I think there are things that we're starting to see that might look, and this is early for us, but that might look a little bit more personality type. And I don't mean MBTI kind of personality type.
There's no gender related though at this point.
No, what you have is people. You can see optimists, as I would describe, so a classic optimist. So people who rate in a tight cluster. Typically, senior people rate in a very similar way. So they sort of tend to be quite outwardly positive, and then you'll see, but you can see job types, so people I was describing that sort of are happy in a range of 30 to 50 when, there are other people who can't rate below 50, right? A terrible day for them is 60. So what you start to see is a pattern of how people are.
I would also imagine, we do have to cut to a break, so we can't get into it too much, but I would imagine that for, obviously this platform is for, larger companies that have more than sort of 100 plus employees. But I would imagine that you could start to see issues within departments starting to develop as well. Like if everyone across the board is, the same sort of pattern, and then you've got this data that's sort of lies as an anomaly over here, and you're like, hang on, this whole department, everybody is miserable, but the rest of the organization seems to be going okay, well, then that, flags some potential problems and solutions if they pay attention. I know you can't reply because we have to cut to the break, but when we come back, I'll give you a chance to reply, and then we'll I think we have 2 more sessions, so it has gone quick as usual. Stay tuned, guys. We'll be back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. We discover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back to Happiness Ninja Down Under. I am Jamie Rose, and you are listening to Bold Brave Media, coming to you live from New York and the UK. I have the CEO of Happiness Lab, David, here with me. Before the break, we were talking about the tool and how it helps employee engagement and well-being. It tracks it. There's an algorithm. David, so I didn't give you a chance to respond. I pitched the question of does it show you patterns within teams? If there's a problem within a team, do the algorithms highlight that? So if you'd like to, you can have your answer now.
Thank you. Yeah, again, you're absolutely right. You know, that we talked a lot earlier on, of course, about the individual components that was very much secondary for us in what we were thinking. So yes, this is about sort of understanding on what's happening. Is it in a function, in a team, in a division? But also, you can go further than that and say, well, when we think about our workplaces, well, so you asked about, is there a difference in the way that men and women rate? Well, there isn't in terms of the way men and women rate normally, but what if there was in your company? So looking at so demographics, you know, whether and behavior things that go with that. So are we hearing all voices? Are people experiencing work in a consistent way that we would like? You know, so can we see people who are having worse days based upon some demographic, you know, sort of filter or criteria, or you know, there's a whole load of different ways that you can look at this data that says, actually, this is a much clearer way to look at the organization that we say we want to be or we believe we are, and how that. So I think that's, you know, so that ability to view teams, you know, and any other sort of lens or perspective, any way of looking at your population is an organization is just one of those, but yeah, it's all possible and really important. So we do those things, and again, it's all live data that you can cut and slice in different ways. So it's really powerful.
So this, the reports for the algorithms, that goes along, like you give that to the clients sort of like daily, weekly, monthly? How does that work?
It's just live. It's it's there. It's like a
Oh,
dashboard.
it's live, and they can just touch. They can log in and see it.
So everybody sees it. So it's transparent. So you're trying to get everybody has the same information about the workplace, so we can see what's going on, right? So employees have that, and when you're in a platform, if I'm a manager of a function, and I've got my team, so what are my people saying? How are they feeling? How many good days are they having compared to the bad days that they're experiencing? Do I have any well-being issues in my function right now? And a level to look at more detail. So there's a whole host of days that what we're doing is making those intangible bits of data, so the create a good workplace, motivate the team. They're jobs that every leader does, but never writes on their to-do list, right? And we're giving them and making those things practical and meaningful sort of insights about that bit that's really difficult, right? So we don't know when we're getting it right. So there's loads of stuff like that, even down to we've got this events module and an experiments module where you can go and, so if I put 10 people on a training program, I can tag 10 people, create a control group and see what happens as a result of this intervention that we've made to see if it makes a difference to how they feel, right?
Yeah,
and you can do that.
Incredible.
We do 2 different types of communication to our staff about a change, see which one has a bigger impact and which one lasts longest, and so there's just stuff like that you can really start to isolate and start to really say, okay, what's the effect that we have, the decisions that we take on our people, and how do we keep them having more good days and fewer bad days? I mean, that's the bottom line. That's what we're all trying to do.
Do you get the feedback from
that's
companies on how they've implemented certain things as a result of the reports? Like, do they come and tell you that?
Sometimes. I mean, we're so it's a platform of insights. It's a tool for them to use. We work with all of our clients to help them, but we're not, we don't sell them consultants alongside the work. We believe that they can, there are people like you and others out there who can help them with a whole host of different things, and we'll just help them to get the best from the tool. And so if they're asking us about the sorts of things they're doing, we build little champions communities inside organizations and wellbeing with them on a monthly basis, just to see what they're doing. And get out. They're all possible, but just a large board of insights about your workplace.
We just had a bit of a technical issue there, David. Sorry, I didn't hear the last of what you were just saying. So I asked if businesses ever give you their feedback, and you said that sometimes they do, and I think you were starting to say you can run certain check-in with them.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So we'll work with our clients on a monthly basis just to make sure we're sort of understanding what they're doing and helping them to get the best from the tool. But it's a tool. To experiment, to get their people to say, look, these are all the things that we can see from the system. What do we want to try and do something about? And so that's the way that we would approach it. So there's change is much better done inside organizations from the bottom up. That's how it's going to make a difference.
And I mean, it's like with everything in terms of happiness, employee well-being and engagement, there's all these things that you can implement, but if you don't run with them and you don't implement them properly, then you can't blame anyone else but yourself. It's not the tool or the workshop or something like that. It's the fact that the follow through hasn't happened from the company, whether it's staff no longer feel psychologically safe to engage with the tool. These are various outcomes that can happen. I'm sure you've seen a lot of things. We don't have long till the break, and I want to sort of lead into the future of Happiness Lab, because I know you have had some issues with employees embracing happiness and well-being. Do you want to just start on that and So actually, we have to cut to the break now, so we can't even give you a chance to respond to that. But when we come back, talk about the future of Happiness Lab, and you can touch on the issues the challenges that people have had on embracing that word happiness within the workplace. So we'll be back in a moment, guys.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Welcome back to Happiness Ninja Down Under. I'm Jamie Rose, and this is Bold Brave TV. We just had a quick break, but we want to dive straight in. We've got to wrap up. So I'm going to give David the chance to tell us the future of Happiness Lab. I know you have had some challenges, David, around CEOs and executives embracing that word happiness within the workplace. Would you like to share some of that with us?
Yeah, I think it's it's a word, isn't it? Happiness. That I don't know whether this will work in the US, but with Marmite. Do you have Marmite in the US? So Marmite, of course, is like a yeast paste, isn't it? That people love or they hate. And I think using happiness in our name has that effect for some people. So for some people,
Marmite, yeah.
So, like, does it belong in the workplace or doesn't it? And I think so. So what's quite interesting about that is it causes everybody to try to define it. Can you define it? Can you measure it? Can we? What is it? Is it something even appropriate for work? And yet we kind of know, don't we? The science of happiness is out. We know that people perform better when they're feeling happier. But the word, as I say, causes distraction. So for us, we're going to continue down this line. We've realized, as you probably heard through our story, that what started as a sort of happiness tool actually is really about helping organizations to listen differently to their staff, to tune in to well-being, to monitor and really build that sort of picture of what's going on for our people and are they doing okay?
What's really going on? Yeah.
Yeah, what's really going on? And so for us, I think we're reaching a point now where we're saying, okay, perhaps we've grown and changed so much in the last that we don't look like the same firm anymore, and so we're what's likely to be ahead for us. In fact, I know this is, but we'll be introducing a new brand, sort of a growing up. So Happiness Lab will be growing up and probably coming back with a different identity.
So heading away from the word happiness. Look, it doesn't surprise me. In a few episodes, I'll be having somebody on from a large organization. I won't disclose who it is yet, but they started off with chief happiness officers in their organization, and they found the same thing, that confusion, that resistance, that misunderstanding around the word happiness in the workplace, and they just shifted and started to, they've called it now humanizing business, which is essentially what we're talking about, right? Like, we want to bring the human element back into the workplace and remember that we all are human beings. We're not just these robotic, workaholic things.
And you're absolutely right. And I think that's exactly, we often, we try to compartmentalize things in work. And so we talk about happiness and we talk about engagement and we talk about other things, but actually what we're really trying to do is say, we're trying to do the job that we're paid, that company needs to do. The company's got a set of objectives that it needs to achieve, and we need humans that are thriving well together to make that happen. And so from my taking, if we can remove the words that make that difficult for people to understand, because conceptually they will get it, right? And people who are trying to make a difference, and everybody wants to go to work and enjoy their work. And so for us, we'll be moving to an identity that really embraces the listening side of things. Really starting to say, we need companies to listen better to their people.
I totally understand. You're not the first company to change and to move away from that word happiness for those reasons. For me, there is this misunderstanding, and I'm really passionate about, I want people to embrace the word happiness. I understand that businesses need to be meeting people where they're at, but who are like, no, people will understand this word. Thank you. We have run out of time. Did you want to just, before we everybody know where they can still find you until you do, decide to rebrand and change the name, give yourself a plug so people can access you?
Well, happinesslab.com, as we will find the website. And you'll also find us on LinkedIn. I'm David Bellamy. So you'll find me on LinkedIn as well. I spend most of my sort of social media time. But yes, happinesslab.com is the place. So come find us, check us out, and try the platform for yourselves if you want to.
You've heard it straight from David Bellamy, not Bellamy. Thank you again, David. It's been a pleasure, and I'll talk to you again soon. Take care, guys, and tune in next week.
Thank you.
This has been Happiness Ninja Down Under with your host, Jamie Rose. Tune in each week and join the conversation as Jamie highlights the true power of the human mind to create a thriving world. Right here on Jamie Rose's Happiness Ninja Down Under.
You've been listening to the BBM Global Network. The ideas, views, and opinions of this broadcast are those of the participants of the program and are not necessarily the ideas, views, and opinions of the BBM Global Network Company.